Thank you, Irene. My name is Jack. I'm an addict. Thanks, everyone, and it's good to see you all again this weekend. So we've actually been talking a lot in various motions about the literature survey, and of course, there's an essay about it in the car as well as examples. So the opening essay talks about some of, as you can see in the PowerPoint, the resource challenges that the pandemic created for NAS. And I apologize, I'm looking to the left, but the way my screen is, in order to see your PowerPoint, I have to look away from you. And the role of the survey in trying to unite the different streams of ideas. So could I get the next slide, please? I'm going to pull up my card. Okay. So 4 items in the survey come from regional motions the WSC has already approved. And those would be for a new IPR booklet, the DRT MAT as it relates to NA, which was approved in 2018. On using social media in NA, which was also approved in 2018. Targeted literature for women in recovery, approved in 2020. And then a PR video explaining what NA is, how it works, and how to contact us, also approved in 2020. In the survey, or at least in the car, those are denoted by being in blue as well as in an asterisk. I know at different times in this workshop, we talked about the importance of segregating or distinguishing those. I'm glad to see that has happened, but that doesn't take away from certainly what we heard, that some participants weren't aware that of how that interfaced with this. Those of you that have been here all weekend know what I'm referring to. I don't want to go too deep down that road, but certainly we'll take that feedback back when the board meets next week and talks about what we heard in CAT and CAR workshops. So most of the remaining ideas that you see in the survey are carryovers from previous surveys. We've also included some ideas from regional and zonal motions in the CAR and other ideas found through the planning process. And even, you know, Irene and I worked this cycle with regions or zones who presented CAR motions. And a percentage of them, I can't remember exactly how many, Irene, let's say a third-ish, probably ultimately withdrew their motions because we were able to find a path that helped the maker feel that their idea and what they were trying to accomplish was done. And that would also include putting some of these ideas into the CAR survey. Next slide. So everyone has till April 1st to fill out the survey online. If you're able to do it online, it makes it much easier to gather and tabulate the information. There is, at the beginning of the survey, the opportunity to say, is this from an individual? Is it from a group of friends? Is it from a region, a zone, whatever? So there's an opportunity to do that. There's certainly no barrier to participating with a group or region and also doing it individually. You're welcome to do that. I think the more participation we get, the better overall. There's also room, I believe, for some comments in there as well. So again, you have until April 1st. Now, I always hate to say that because you tell people April 1st on February 4th, and everybody thinks they got 2 months to get it done. So if you want to do it, we encourage you to do it soon. You can find it at na.org/survey. You can also, I believe I found it also going to the conference website, and there were some links that way as well. So there's several ways to get it, but the simplest one is na.org/survey. Next slide, please. So unless otherwise directed at the WSC, work is going to continue on the loaner IP revisions. Those of you that have been part of this conversation know that we have some literature that just is really dated, and I would say these decisions are always subjective. You'd be hard pressed to find something more dated than the loaner in terms of the practices it talks about for members in isolation. In part, the reality of connecting online has radically changed much of the philosophy behind the loaner IP. When it was written, that didn't exist. There were, I don't even know if there was an internet. Well, Al Gore would say there was, but there wasn't an active internet when that was created. So it's certainly something that would benefit an isolated member. The DRT MAT as relates to NA will be worked on. What do we want to say in a piece of literature was an IDT the last cycle. And as Irene mentioned yesterday, and you'll hear more about this, the board is, and feel free to jump in and add it maybe if you want, Irene. We're a little stymied with this because it's a important topic that affects many communities that definitely has a lack of consensus within our fellowship. And the information we're getting back really indicates the strong differences of perspective, both philosophically and practically, on this topic. And I think the board would be, or the conference rather, really not the board, I think the conference would be hard pressed to approve anything that's really, really specific about that topic, because we don't have. Why don't you weigh in, Irene, on this? But is it clear? I don't think we just have enough specificity to. It's a challenge.
No, I mean, it's really 50-50, and people's views are very varied, you know? I mean, just for example, there's some of our members that would like NA World Services to make a statement when you are and are not clean. Like, that's one extreme, you know what I mean? And then, you know, there's some of our members that want us to say things like, you know, yeah, it's okay to do service when you're on methadone. You know, just things like this that we think is, first of all, is not under our, you know, is not under our remits to basically to take to groups, you know, how they want to function, but also to find something that's different than what we've already said and the various pieces of literature where we address this issue. There's no point producing something that's not different, and there's no point producing something that doesn't have the consensus of our membership on what our philosophy is. So that's why we've kind of reached a wall on this. But everybody is going to see this because it's going to be the survey, the survey and the loaner survey. You're going to see them. You're going to see them in the conference report. So you'll see what we mean.
Yeah, and we're just kind of foreshadowing this a little bit. I don't know where this will end up. What I can say is the need for a resource and for clarity, particularly in North America and the United States. We're very aware of this issue. It comes up all the time in emails and in questions. And of course, I'm speaking to mostly members in the United States. So most of you have your own experience in your own communities as to, you know, the reality of this challenge. So anyway, finally, this section of the survey will help the WSC, you know, determine what are the priorities for future literature projects. And go to the next slide, please. All right, so these are some of the topics that are on there. You can see the different, so whether you're looking at this in the car or obviously in the PowerPoint, these are, I believe, most of the, maybe all of the ideas that are listed in the car that are currently on the survey. You can see, for example, in the targeted literature, probably the majority of ideas that we've heard from various workshops, members, and our own experience are represented in targeted literature. The ideas of, you know, for the new IP or booklet are I mean, I look at these and like, who would be opposed, like on some level, dealing with grief and recovery? Hell, you could add dealing with horrible breakups in recovery. I mean, this idea that we have to navigate challenging feelings in recovery is something we can all relate to. I think the challenge that the conference and the board have is, how do we prioritize? And are we providing something? For example, if I think of relationship pain, I know I can go to Living Clean and I've got a chapter in there that has some good resources. So I would think part of what will help inform this is, where are our gaps? In other words, where are the gaps that we don't have existing literature that might be useful, some of which addresses some of these topics. Well, it says pause for discussion. So I think we can take down the PowerPoint, and on this one, Irene, definitely jump in with me, because you know, this is an area where, unlike maybe a car motion where it's more definitive, there may be some black and white answers, but there's probably a lot that aren't on this topic. So Kelly, I see your hand up, and oh, and Pam, I see your note. Several of us are unable to get the survey to open on our computers with Chrome or Edge. What I would suggest for that is send an email to wb@na.org noting the problem. That will then be forwarded to our IT people. You could probably even do webmaster at, but if you do WB at, I'm sure it'll get routed. And please communicate that. And is somebody, Barry, are you facilitating, or are we, I think you are, and we're not calling on people, right? You are?
Yes.
Great, okay.
Kelly?
All righty. So Kelly Attic, RD, Alabama, Northwest Florida, Roll Tide. Good to see you again, Jack. How you doing?
Good.
All right.
You had to do that roll tide on me, though.
Yeah, I did.
I know.
So,
I can put on a Auburn hat if it makes you happy.
dude. So, not to turn this into a DRT, MAT workshop, IDT discussion group. I think that there's an opportunity here, rather than seeing a divisive issue without a clear direction. We have bulletins that have addressed this before in the past. The bulletin with special interest group did not come out with a definitive direction on that issue. It was a divisive issue when it was written, and that was what was put into the bulletin, that this is a controversy in this issue. So I think that I heard that I've been hearing that the feedback that you've been getting is 50-50 and divisive. And in my mind, I may be the only one, but I'm like, that's what we need written. That's what we need on our table, is that this is a divided issue, so that when professionals or members come in, they'll know that, NA is still trying to work this out. So, I need to get direction from members I trust in the fellowship, or, because right now they're just coming in blind, and there's nothing that is characterizing that. So, and then one more. So you made a reference that unless otherwise, unless something else is done different, we're going to work on these 3 projects. And so again, a flag went up, and I'm like, can you give an example of what could happen at the conference where those projects get tanked to the bottom?
Sure, I can give 2.
Over.
We could have a unexpected pandemic again that shifts our priorities, or the conference could give us different direction. Those would be the only 2 that really spring to mind.
But how would they do that? Because we've got car motions, right?
Yeah, how would the conference give us a different direction? I'm not exactly sure, but there are a number of ways they can. We are committed to working on them, and we will work on the car motions. But what we saw in 2020 is we had to stop work on most things. And the conference, Kelly, has the ability to shift priorities. You're forcing me to create hypothetical scenarios unlikely to occur. But let's say in the new ideas session, something comes out, and then in the last day session, something is approved that's completely different. I don't think that's likely at all. But when the conference is in session, the conference has the ability to articulate and to give a conscience. So I would say to answer your question of what could shift priorities, not much, but it would be the conference itself through the mechanisms it has to communicate its conscience. Okay,
and I apologize for the pushing in the corner on that, but yeah. I'm going to be presenting this information, yeah. And I need to say, as far as we know, these are still priority. Keep that in mind when you're filling out the survey, as we had alluded to yesterday. But I'm just concerned that my region is not going to really. They already know DRT, MATs, and women in recovery are there. Okay, we're going to do something else, and then I get there, and like you said, something occurs. I don't have a conscience now to really affect the decision that may tank those projects.
Yeah, Go ahead, Ray. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, Kelly. They won't be tanked as in sunk to the bottom of the ocean, or maybe I'm got the wrong meaning of the word tank. It's been a while since I lived in America, but I mean, it would just mean that they would move. if something else is prioritized, they're still going to get done. I mean, the women pamphlet and the that was, and the loaner were 2020, the DRT and the social media were 18. Those 4 that are approved, we know they've been sitting there for quite a few years. But just to go back to what you said about the DRT, I hear what you're saying about producing something to say we're conflicted, but we still need something different than, for example, what's already written in Narcotics Anonymous and persons receiving medication-assisted treatment, or NA groups of medication, or when we talk about our general philosophy of members who have issues where they might need any kind of a medication. I mean, we address that to some degree in the mental health pamphlet and NA groups of medication. I mean, they're different issues, obviously. One is addiction, one is mental health. But there are many places that we talk about our philosophy of welcoming everybody to we only have one requirement for membership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, And it's just really, I think we do need to find something a little different to say. But I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. I think we're going to be discussing it at the conference. From all the CAR workshops I've been in so far, it's sounding to me like this may be one of the ones rising right to the top, because I've heard that in every CAR workshop I've been in. So of course we're going to have to do something with it. But your guess is as good as mine what that's going to look like after we all finish talking about it.
And Kelly, when I look at exactly what the PowerPoint in the CAR says, it says unless otherwise directed by the WSC. So really, that would be my response to the another way, unless otherwise directed by the WSC. And while I don't know what that could look like, and I don't anticipate it, the board constantly is asking, what does the fellowship want us to do? We're agents of the fellowship. So that would be, so I apologize if that language raised a concern, but it simply, unless the conference directs us otherwise, this is what we're planning to do.
All right, thank you. Wolvina.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I guess my questions are, this survey instrument that you're using now is a new tool as of the last conference. So I'm wondering why there wasn't a decision, or how did you come to the decision not to create a separate priority survey for the already passed motions, like breaking those out into a separate survey so that there wouldn't be a misunderstanding or misinterpretation by groups or RDs presenting this information? And then I'm wondering, will the survey topics be connected to issue discussion topics, and how will the point persons for literature work groups be selected? And are you waiting for new board members in order to do that assignment?
Well, I think Irene's going to take some of it. One thing I want to clarify, Wolvina, this is actually the 4th time we've had a survey in the CAR. So we've actually done this many times previously. You want to take a stab at some of the other questions in there, Irene? I didn't write them all down. You're muted.
I was saying, Wolvina, you got quite a few questions into that one question.
I'm so sorry. Well, you know what? The first one was really, isn't it the first time that you put past motions back into a literature survey?
Okay.
Possibly,
No.
I'd have to look at that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, as Jack said, it's the 4th time we've used this process. No, I don't believe it is, but we could double check that. But I can tell you is the reason. I don't actually remember having this exact discussion on the exact reason why we put those in the survey. But my overall viewpoint on it is, we wouldn't do those in a separate survey because we don't have to ask you guys if we should do these. We are going to do these. These have been decided. Their motions have been passed at the conference. These 4 things have been passed will get done. So they don't need a separate survey to decide they are going to get done. It was just like we had the big example, And I'm probably sound like I'm repeating myself, but obviously the huge pandemic just blew everything out of the water and threw virtual tools right to the top of the list, something many of our members had no interest. You know, I have to say, prior to the pandemic, I don't think I ever attended an online recovery meeting in my life. I did service meetings, but not recovery meetings, because I've always been in places where there's tons of meetings. So do you know what I mean? So that's an unexpected thing that happened, but these 4 will get done. I think you also asked about something about work groups, Wilvina.
Yeah, I was asking about, it seems, or this is the question, how are the literature work group point persons determined, and were you guys waiting for new board members to be elected to be point persons on those literature projects and directing that work?
Okay. Well, first of all, we weren't necessarily waiting for new board members. First of all, the board members obviously will be elected at the same conference where we'll know what those projects are. We go back to the board, and the EC has a discussion, and how we normally do it is on fairness and rotation. We look at, first of all, as you know, the projects will be their project plans, and everything will be, any work group we do have will be meeting virtual, or any focus groups will be virtual. So for a project plan, you don't yet have a work group for a literature project. It's just a plan. Do you know what I mean? So, but how we do choose members and point people is, I don't believe we would choose anybody who just rolled onto the board, not usually, for a point person. We'd usually choose somebody who had a little bit of board experience, first of all. Like, we wouldn't throw somebody in the deep end. And that's basically chosen on fairness and rotation. All of us board members have different charges and different roles on the board. And so we basically look at, fairness and rotation when we're picking point people.
Okay, so it also sounds like, because there were only a few persons qualified to be point people, and they were either involved in current projects, that may be one reason why those other projects were not addressed, in addition to, I guess, the staffing issues with the pandemic.
I want to interrupt, because I don't think that's actually correct. And I see I've got Craig and Jim, who are past board chairs here, and others. I'm thinking back to 2004, when Paul and I were on the PR handbook work group, and Ron Miller was in his first cycle, and he was put on as the point person then. So typically, my understanding of what happens is, once the conference is met, once the composition of the board is known, once the work groups and priorities for the cycle are established, the board figures out who's doing what. But I don't think there's been any delay of any kind based on a lack of competent point people.
Thanks for that, Jack. Thank you. And yeah, just trying to clarify that. And then will the survey go to issue discussion topics, the literature survey, or is that a separate survey that informs the issue discussion topics?
Yes, we have the recovery literature, the issue discussion topics, and the service material. They're on the next parts of the slide.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks. And Jack, thanks for clearing that. You're right, actually. I believe Hamid was in his first cycle. I guess I was just thinking along the lines of, like, as soon as they rolled on, we wouldn't throw somebody immediately in the deep end, and we take a look at who's available, and,
Sure, and you're absolutely right too. We typically wouldn't take somebody and throw them in the deep end, but then sometimes you get someone that, for whatever reason, is the right fit, and you just figure it out. But you're right, you don't want to throw someone in the deep end.
But anyway, that's not the delay. And just to clarify also to Wilvina that, a project plan, you don't have the point person until you're actually forming the work group, which isn't part of a project plan. Anyway, so are we going to do the next slides then, or?
We have a question here.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm the alternate delegate from the OK region. This is in regard to the three of the four pieces of literature that have already been passed by the conference. And as Irene said, they're going to be done. So I kind of view those decisions made as a group conscience, loving power greater than ourselves that is expressed his or herself through the group conscience. And I just think that that indicates that it should be a priority. So could it be possible that we follow through and there's been work done on these as well? Is it possible that even if they don't, because there's been some confusion about the survey, do we mark the ones that are marked in blue or not? I don't know how many surveys have already gone through, and I don't know if we will possibly go through without people understanding the differences between the already accepted pieces and the possible pieces. But could we not prioritize those regardless of what the survey says, and then because they've already been passed? Follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And one thing these CAT workshops have revealed is confusion on this issue. And thank you for sharing it. Absolutely, there's a difference between a project approved by the conference and one that is not. Absolutely. We have direction and a commitment from the conference to complete those projects that were approved by a CAR motion. I think in part, the reason these are included in the survey is, as it says in the CAR, in part, this is being used to prioritize limited resources. So it seemed to me both disingenuous as well as inaccurate not to include all the projects we know about in order to see what the conference believes are the priorities. That said, let's say that everything, I'm going to go hypothetical, which I hate to do, but I will. Let's say everything that was a CAR motion is in the bottom 10%. It doesn't relieve the obligation NA World Services has to fulfill the will of the conference as expressed in the CAR motion. So I think in large part, this is being used to understand what the priorities are. We certainly are trying to remind the participants in the survey that these are already approved, but in large part, this is a tool being used to determine priorities. So including projects that we're already committed to within those priorities, I think helps people understand what the priorities are, where that fits in. At least that was the intention. Is the execution good? Maybe not, because there's obviously, I've been hearing all weekend here about the confusion this process has created by having those projects included. But that was the intention.
Okay, so if for example, a couple of the other possible projects come in higher ranked in the survey, would we still focus on the ones that have already been approved and then put those next ones following the ones that are already approved? The survey is going to make the decision, and the World Service Conference will make the decision. But that seems like a little bit of a mixed answer.
Well, I think what we've said, and assuming we can have the opportunity to do this at the conference, let's say the circumstance you described exists where some things are ahead of the projects already approved. And our resources are such that we can't complete them all in this cycle. In an ideal world, we have that discussion with the conference and say, hey, what order do you want us to do these in? Danny talked about this yesterday, 1, then 2, then 3. I think we're trying to establish an order, and some projects are going to take a lot more resource, time, and energy than others. So until we see what the priorities are, and ideally have the opportunity to engage the conference in the prioritization, we won't have an exact answer. I can say every board member understands when we've been directed by a CAR motion to do something, we have an obligation to do it. What we're trying to determine is when we do it and what in what priority, knowing we can't do everything concurrently.
Okay, yeah, I understand the limiting resources. What you said makes perfect sense. So if that scenario were to occur, and then the conference says, well, we want, even though these other two were ranked higher in the survey, we already had these in the pipeline, let's knock these out first as resources allow, and then we'll move on to these other two. That's a possibility that you're saying exists. So that's a great solution.
Yeah, I think everybody on the board probably wants the conference to make this decision, not us. And the question is, how do we engage to do it? I mean, it's the conference's choice. And our job is to facilitate that in a way that we get an accurate conscience of the conference and follow that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions?
We have one back here.
One in the back?
I'm an addict named Patty, RD from Minnesota. So the loaner is a project that's underway, approved, not in here because, tell me if I heard you correctly, because it's already underway. It's more obvious that it needs to be updated. Is that the language? What's that?
At least at my end, you cut it out a little. Did you hear it all, Irene?
Yeah, yes, I did. She was asking about, the loaner actually, it is there in the, it is there in the survey. Are you saying it's not in there?
Sorry, I'm looking at new recovery literature. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it is in the survey. What we did say is that we really hope to make this a high priority given, given that we do have a survey that just came back recently, which you will also see the results, that does give pretty good direction. And as Jack has said earlier, the difference that, having internet now, for example, from that pamphlet, I mean, we have pretty clear direction on what the loaner could say. And so this is a project that has been quite well progressed, that we probably do have enough material that it wouldn't take, as much resources as starting from scratch with another project would. And since it has been passed. So that's what we were saying in the essay, that we really do hope to be able to progress the loaner this cycle. But once again, if the conference says no, do something else, that's what we'll do. And that's really what the moving forward session on the last day of the conference is about. It's for us leaving the conference all with the understanding of what our work for the next cycle will be.
Great. I think that's an important IP, and we just kind of looked through here and I'm seeing it actually in there, which so
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I thought I had heard about the maker for the motion on the IP for women in recovery had backed away from the motion, or that, can you give a little background on what's been going on with the women in recovery IP?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything like that. Have you, Jack? I mean, the motion's passed. So whatever the maker feels about it now, it's gone. The World Service Conference passed it. So, they're a maker's motion, and then when it's passed, it becomes all of our motion. But I hadn't heard that.
Okay. Thank you, Irene.
One point I want to make about the literature survey is one of the reasons the board took this approach is we'd get all these great motions in the car or great ideas from people, because there's so many great ideas for improving how we carry our message in writing. The challenge is prioritizing. So while the system we're using certainly can be improved, the goal of this literature survey is to say, hey, there's a bunch of great ideas. We can't do them all. We've got to prioritize. So let's collectively try to do that. So that's what's driving all this. Because absent this, you have a shotgun approach, meaning you get a car motion, you get a new business idea for faculty, a new business motion, or you get things of that nature that look at each thing in isolation. And speaking as a board member, what I would want my fellow conference participants to know is it has to be looked at holistically. we have to look at it in balance, that if we do this, what's the opportunity cost here? Because everything we do has an opportunity cost. And our goal is to be as effective in carrying our message as we can. So that's underpinning all this. That's the goal of this. Can the process be improved? Absolutely. We're already hearing ideas of how to do it, but that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
What's that? It looks like they can't find the loaner on the survey.
It's already processed. So why
Okay.
would it be on the survey?
The survey's closed and the results will be in the conference report.
Okay.
Sorry, is that what you mean?
Any other questions? I'm not seeing any other questions.
Here's the next slide.
I think we discussed most of it though.
You want to ask the whole board if they want to go through any more?
Yep, does the board want to go through any more of these? Because we kind of stopped in the middle of the. No, I'm not muted.
I mean, sure, if there's any questions, we're here to do our best to answer.
Listen, I also want to clarify something. I may have misspoke or misunderstood when we were talking about the loaner survey. Okay, I think I'm getting some clarity now. You're talking about the actual IP not being on the survey list that you fill out, correct? Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Okay, I apologize for that. So that's because that the survey has already been done and the project is underway. I mean, we've gathered the information. It's at that stage of it, and it was already prioritized by the WSC, and the project plan was already approved. So I apologize. That's why that wasn't, because that's already underway.
No problem. We let you go by because we sort of answered our own question here.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a bit confused on that because when I summoned over here to loaner survey, I was thinking about the survey that was online that people were able to take and give input. Sorry.
No problem. So is there any more questions about the survey? We're not having any here, so I'd like to ask the board if you're open for any other just questions at this time.
They don't want to do the rest of this PowerPoint.
Sure. I think, Irene, yes.
Okay.
As well.
We went through that,
Okay.
basically,
Are we doing the rest?
just
of
not on the
PowerPoint?
slides.
Did you want to just look at the last couple of slides or?
We have a question in the back of the room right now.
Yeah, I was gonna wait for the presentation. I'm Natalie, Addict, Plain State Treasurer, and from Best Little. Hey, so I have some questions as I've been sitting here for a few days. I've been to a couple of conferences. I did the virtual one and I've done an in-person one, but I just have some questions. Because every time like I email the World Board or whatever, they get back to me, they answer my question and they do all that. And so I see a lot of project plans on here. And so my question is this: if I came to, as a region, And I said, hey, World Board, I want to sit down and have a discussion with you about topic A. Can I not just come have a discussion with you? Do I have to put in a project plan to get you to have a discussion with me? I mean, is that like the process? Because I just feel like I should be able to have a discussion with the World Board and get some input. Can we like put time on your calendar? Because y'all have always been so nice when I've asked for questions. And I'm not being like divisive or anything. I just feel like, or my other question is, all these motions that got put in for project plans, did they come to the World Board and they were told no? And then they came in and put in a motion to say, hey, we want to force this upon the conference. Well, that's probably being divisive. Hey, we want everybody else to come sit with it. Like, that's my question. I just want to know the process. Can't we have a discussion and get some input as like from the World Board?
I think this is good for Irene and I both to answer. I'll give a small part of an answer. At the last in-person conference, we emailed all conference participants and said, if you'd like to sit down with a World Board member, have lunch, have a conversation, we made time to do that. I see Matt on here. Matt, we had that lunch with you and Tim and I to talk about some things, or maybe it was 18. I don't exactly remember. I would think we will continue that practice, and I think all board members are open to trying to do that. And I'll let Irene talk more about ways that could happen, but that's one. At the conference, I anticipate we'll be making some space for that for in person, because that's a unique opportunity when people aren't normally together in person.
Yeah. And also, you know, you have your assigned delegates. So we've 13 board members and about, I think what is 113 or something RDs approximately. And each of us have approximately 10. So I know I personally have had many discussions. You know, I've organized Zoom calls and I've had chats about people's ideas. I have a meeting tomorrow with the RD team from Israel regarding some of their ideas. And yeah, that's the kind of thing we do to help people kind of bounce ideas around. Also, whichever board members, if it does come to the motion part, we do spend quite a bit of time in discussions. Like myself and Jack, we were this cycle with the RDs when it gets to that point as well, you know, discussing their motions, seeing, you know, what we can do that doesn't need a motion, seeing if they want to amalgamate with somebody else. But yeah, just that idea. Yeah, absolutely. You can contact your assigned board member anytime and ask for a conversation.
So my other question, that doesn't have anything to do, my thing is like, I'd rather just have a solid discussion with a bunch of my peers and try to hash it out and figure out what's the financial impact and what's it going to look like for the fellowship as a whole before we put it down into motion. But my other thing is, so Danny listed approximately 6 projects. What I hear is we're about 40% into how many we have on staff. How many people does it take to work a project plan? How many people do you put on that generally? And how long does it take them on average? Because I know every project plan would take about that long. Like every project plan is different, right? I do a lot of projects myself. So how much staff is put to that or volunteers when doing these projects?
It absolutely depends on the project. I was the point person for WSC of the Future. I think we had 17 people in the work group. We had 5 staff, lots of preparation meetings, a lot of logistics. I see Paul on here, and others that have been. Danny was on service, but Paul was mental health. I mean, they all vary. If one of you want to share, but like on that project, a lot. The one I'm referring to, WSC of the Future. Do one of you want to share about a different project and what it took?
Well, just on the project plan itself, yeah. Well, the projects I worked on, geez, no, I can't even think of a specific example because like Jack said, like everything is so different. Everything takes such different resources. I mean, once it gets going, we could give you a breakdown. You know, once it gets going, for example, we could say, you know, how many staff, how many hours that took. We could give you approximates, but there's so many people involved in so many different aspects of a project, you know, from taking the minutes to, if it's a face-to-face meeting, to helping people make travel arrangements, to, you know, typing up, editing, you know, I mean, there's so many different aspects of it. But for the project plan itself, I mean, yeah, I can't, that's like how long is a piece of a string, really? I don't have a specific example.
Well, here's Paul,
Right.
he's point on mental health.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Thanks, Irene. I can give some input into the work group that I was the point person on, which was the mental health and recovery pamphlet, and the project plan was relatively straightforward because we had 835 pieces of input from the fellowship during the course of the project plan, all of which were had to be collated by staff. So they're all sent in, they all had to be collated by staff, they all had to be put in a format where the work group, when it was formed, could actually look at refining those down to being a IP. So you can imagine hundreds of thousands of words. That was a considerable editing process. The actual work group itself, the project itself, work group met 6 times, and then if you add to so there were 2 staff members at each meeting, which was 3 days, and then there was all the time that the staff also spent in writing up the results of the meeting, putting together drafts to send out to the fellowship. I mean, we're talking about a considerable number of person hours here. So I would say that every single project is extremely different depending on what the project is. As Jack said, and as Irene said, we could probably give you the numbers of a project and the project plan, but that would tie up a considerable amount of staff resources and time in putting that together. So it's really about how do we prioritize our, how do we prioritize our resources best, given that our resources are very squeezed and the fellowship is expanding all the time. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
No, it is, Paul. And I just remembered I was point person on the 5th work group, which was a virtual project plan that Kelly was there. Absolutely different in terms of resources of WSC of the Future. The only staff people were Becky and Anthony. We had, Becky took notes. There was, I think, 7 people, Kelly-ish. And that was, now not to knock the WSC of the Future alumni that are on here, it was a lot easier to work with 7 people virtually than 17 in person. It just is. So, yeah. And Paul, we were PR handbook, we weren't point people, but that was pretty clean. But we met 11, 12 times with 9 people. And when a group meets that long, you start to really develop like whenever I'm asked, what was your favorite work group? That's the one I picked, because by about the midpoint, we were a high functioning team that it's one of my favorite service memories. So it really varies.
I would agree completely, Jack, and I have to say that was my favorite work group as well. I have to say it's because it was my first, and you know what, the first one is always the best.
And we weren't on the board, and so if there was a problem, like, oh, the board can deal with it, so Craig had to deal with it.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah, since I've been on the board, I haven't actually been on a literature project. I was in times of illness before the board. Since I've been on the board, I've been on things like World Convention programming and internal work groups and things like that. Anywho, okay, a bunch of old people reminiscing here now.
Who are you calling old?
Myself. Does that answer your question somewhat vaguely?
Craig's trying to decide if he's going to bring up the service system. I'm teasing you, Craig. That was a tough one.
Go ahead. Yeah, she said that answered her question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple questions over here.
Attic named Jacob from Mid-America. to throw an extreme hypothetical out there just to see if we can get an answer. If every motion was voted no, and the motion to suspend all new literature was passed, how many projects would be continuing that you guys work on? And the second part to that question is, once you finish everything that is on, say, that you're currently working on, are there things that have been pushed back, such as the H&I? It was H&I, right? Yeah. I got the local service, sorry. That had languished for as long as it had. Are there any other things like that or older that still need to be done? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well, you've got a two-part question. I'll answer the first part, and maybe somebody else knows the second part. In the unlikely event that every motion failed but motion 17, which would be the 8-year moratorium on the creation of new literature, what that states specifically was it excludes literature projects currently in development. So the standard or the metric that would be used is, what does currently in development mean? Does it mean a car motion was passed? Does that count? Does it mean things we're already working on? So I would assume a conversation would be had with conference participants to get an understanding of what currently in development means. And I would suspect we would have some consensus and move forward. As far as a list of things that are maybe in development and languishing, maybe Paul or Irene know. There may be some such list. I don't recall seeing one. We can get you an answer to that. This is, and you know, we're all volunteers, like all of you, working part-time, and this is where our special workers really know this stuff. I mean, I know if Becky were here, if there is one, she'd have the Excel spreadsheet and would already have the answer, because that's what she does. But I don't know. Irene, do you know?
Well, I know that we have a thing called the parking lots, and I think there's been things parked there. There are like 50 Chevy sedans that have been parked there for so long. But the parking lot is like ideal. The parking lot is an idea somebody had 10 years ago. 10 years ago that someone said, that's a great idea. We can't do it now, so stick it in the parking lots. Okay, so the bottom line is the NA World Service Office work really hard. And if motion 17 passed to place an 8-year moratorium on the creation of all new recovery literature, I guarantee you they would keep themselves busy with, we'd all keep ourselves busy with things like World Service Conference of the Future, planning the World Convention, service literature projects. Like I remember one project was we had a Russian staff member working in the office, and he was called Serviceman, and he was like a Russian-looking serviceman, and he was a little cartoon, and Serviceman was going to do all these kind of sort of cartoons about doing service. You know, I'm personally a fan of holograms. I'm like, let's make holograms. Okay, so basically, if we had no new recovery literature project for 8 years, yes, there's lots of stuff that we would do. We would continue to remain very busy. But unfortunately, no new recovery literature. And also, you know, we already talked about that motion, but I will just say that I believe that the maker's main ideology behind that motion was the region's belief that if we stopped producing all literature, that suddenly all the languages in the world would catch up and have all of our literature translated into all these languages. And I'm bilingual. I'm sure there's a few other people on this call who's bilingual. I've been on LTCs. That's not how literature translation works. You know, we don't believe that it's going to, you know, meet its objectives. So, but yeah, that's basically, I'm sure, what would happen if that was suspended. But what's actually in the parking lot, like I said, you know, Becky would be your best person on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
There is a question in the chat of what is the status of the PR video?
I think we'd have to check with Jane or the office. I To my knowledge, I haven't heard anything recently, but I could be mistaken.
Thank you.
Frank still on? Yeah. Is region has to be that.
And let me remind everyone, any of these questions, anytime, you don't have to wait for us. Email them, wb@na.org. Say, hey, what's the status of the PR video? You'll get an answer.
Thank you, Jack. Any other questions? Nothing else?
All right.
Somebody had their hand twisted.
So first of all, thank you guys for being with us the last 2 days. This is awesome to have you guys' response, really handy. Have the current two IDTs had good input from the fellowship? Because I know that the loaner IDT is out, available online at NA.org, and so has the DRT MAT, which is the second time for that to be out. Have they had a good input from the fellowship and kind of where those are at? I'll stop there for a second and let somebody answer.
I'm not sure, Irene, are you?
Are you looking for precise numbers? How many respondents to the survey? Is that what you mean?
I guess I'm just looking, like, are you getting enough information to start creating something to come back like as a draft or as a, you know, like the first time we did the DRMAT, we've been discussing that there just wasn't enough there. There wasn't enough meat there to come back with something new. So on the loaner, are we coming back with more input to put out something new? Or is it, do we need to be coming back for our group saying, hey, you guys, we need to really, you know, email in and
Okay.
let the world board know? I guess I'm just wondering what we can do as delegates to help facilitate that. Are you getting enough back, or, you know, is that something that we can emphasize to some of our members?
Yeah. Okay. So what I would say, just to clarify where we are in that process, like we said earlier, that we have the results of the survey. Okay. So that's all the information that we sought from you currently. We're just at that stage now. We have the information. We will be sharing it with you in the conference reports. So you'll be able to see the input from the conference reports. And then we will be discussing that at the conference, but the DRT, like we were saying, is currently just at that stage where we're looking at an exam results. The loaner is progressing. The loaner is in process, but we just recently got the results. So right now, the resources of the staff are focused on the World Service Conference. Once the World Service Conference is over, I'm sure the next phase of literature development, which would be collating the survey information into sort of, you know, into something sort of legible, will begin. But I can't give you an exact time frame on that. But definitely, if we need, this isn't the time to give more input because we've already requested that, and sort of the lines are closed on the input for now. But if we need to go back out there and look for more inputs, we will be doing that. But so far, that's not a plan right now, to look for more input right now, because we've just done that.
And I misspoke. I didn't mean like input. I meant as we have done those session profiles and usually we're asked to email that back in. I guess I was just making, you know, wondering, do we need to have more of that done? You know what is it?
Yeah, yeah.
I was successful. There's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that will become more clear at the conference. Once all of us together have read the survey results and once we've discussed it at the conference, the next step will become clearer, but we're not requesting that at the moment.
And my last question is, Craig, could you please put your region's website? I know you guys have some great PR videos that were created, and I think that would just be a huge resource tool for us. And if anybody else has those on theirs outside of, I mean, I have my zones websites, but I'm not sure about everybody else's, so I have some other zones too, but region websites are great tools.
Thanks.
Are they open for discussion?
Any other questions?
Good.
Thanks, Wavino. Any other questions? Okay. I think we might be done.
So Barry, I know that, let's see, Michael, Danny, Irene, Paul, Hamid, and I appreciate the chance to be here and all of your time. And please reach out to us if there's anything we can do to help you with your car or cat workshops. If you have any questions, that the WB at NA.org really is, it really gets filtered to the people that can help you answer. And I know we all appreciate the opportunity you gave us to come and spend some time with you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you all for your service. You've had 2 very full days. I hope you can have go out and have a bit of fun now.
Thank you very much. Hey, Matt?
Yes, and thanks everyone for allowing us to be of service. It's and we hope to be able to continue to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you at the conference.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Matt? You have your hand up?
Yep, big thank you to the board, and I just wanted everybody else also to recognize and show some appreciation for Barry and Brenda for being really the chief organizers of this thing, for what is the first truly national United States event that has happened in many, many, many years. So thank you so much for that, guys.
Woohoo, Plain States.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, organizers.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to let anyone know that if you're from our zone and you're on this meeting, we will be on another meeting code for the afternoon for our open forum and reports. And then we'll be back on this meeting code in the evening to listen to Craig, get his experience, strength, and hope, share his message, and then we'll have our zonal auction. Thank you very much.
What time is back for that?
7 o'clock Central Time.
They're auctioning the zone. I wonder if I can buy Kansas.
You can, we are auctioning things away. You can pay for it online and we'll bring it to you to the conference.
Barry, when you auction the zone, do you get a seat at the conference with it?
I wouldn't mind South Dakota.
I've been watching Yellowstone.
We're
I'll
not
take
telling South
Montana.
Dakota. All right.
Guys, on the other side, push it up.
Bye.
Bye.
We're gonna pray out here. Love y'all.
So the meeting tonight is at 7 o'clock Central Time for the speaker and the auction?
Yes, and the auction will follow the message.
Okay, all right. So what are you guys I'm just curious, gonna do in the interim, because your flyer says that you're gonna be going on today till 5 o'clock Central Time. So what happens if somebody comes on here between now and 5 o'clock? They'll just not see anybody? Just curious.
We lost.
I mean,
Where'd everything go?
we could workshop the 2022.
Okay, so
The cordless mic.
everything went off on various computers.
No, it's the computer's still up. I just need. Hello. Okay.
Hold on a
Is there not
second.
going to be a 1:15? No 3:15 meeting?
See what I mean?
I'm sorry.
That was what the flyer said, so I was planning on being there.
Right. That's why I said, what if somebody comes on thinking there's something else going on? Or
We're done.
Brenda, can you say anything? Because I'm dead. I don't know what.
Yes, I can say something, but I'm echoing.
Okay, ask Matt to put our ID number into like the waiting.
Matt, can you put? Hold on. Can you shut your speaker off, Barry?
We can hear Barry just fine.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
not
you
dead.
can.
Oh, you can?
Okay.
Okay, Matt, if you could just put our ID into like the waiting room after we log all off. So that I could start the download for the videos.